Welcome into the ranking show on ProBox TV. Download the ProBox TV app. Never fall behind in your boxing news. The ranking show, if you don't know how it works, what we do is behind the scenes, we make a top 5 of a particular weight class, and then we argue about it here so you can argue about it at home. Today, it's a little different. We're talking about the hardest punchers currently in boxing. We have a bunch of names. We're going to say basically where we put them on our list. Well, I got the experts to help me break it down. Jimmy Smith in studio. Joining us via remote is, of course, the champs, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi, also the coach, Teddy Atlas. Can't wait to get their opinions about this list. We'll start off, gentlemen, with Gervonta Davis. Of course, he has 30 wins, 28 by knockout. What do you think of him, Chris, in terms of where he belongs on your list, your top 5? Where would you put him?
Jimmy, I'm glad we're doing the ranking show this way.
Yeah.
Because punching and KOs are really hard to compare, and that's something that I've spoken to so many fighters. Like, oh, who hit harder? Oh, and people are always surprised. There's different kinds of punchers. When it comes to Gervonta Davis, I'm also very happy that Teddy's with us today because he's going to have some fantastic insight. Speaking about dealing with punchers, this guy's dealt with some of the best punchers in history. But when you talk about Gervonta Davis, man, I'm very high on him in terms of power puncher, and obviously because of his knockout percentage. His knock on this list is going to be his competition. He has not fought the same level of the other guys that we have on this list, but his ability to finish fights, his ability to set up the knockout shot is one of the best in the world. I always say that. He's just waiting. He's finding out that time. The name Tank is such a good name for him because he's positioning himself and setting up to blast off with that artillery, because in that left hand, man, that thing is poison. That Frank Martin knockout was very impressive. He's got so many fantastic highlight reel knockouts, and it's one of those things when you're watching him fight, it's not so much if he's going to knock him out, it's when, because you're just waiting for it, and that's the way that he fights as well. Also, the fact that he believes in his power so much, he's willing to fall behind. I love that. I think it makes it more exciting. But in terms of the rest of this list, I'm going to have him towards the bottom based on the opposition that he's fought thus far.
Now, I'm very curious about that. Teddy, since Chris mentioned you, what do you think of the opposition? When we talk about heavyweight punchers, a lot of people talk about Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson exists in an era that didn't have a lot of great heavyweights in it. Does the competition mean a lot to you when you're talking about power and the ability to land it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to. You have to equate in, who they are beating, and in this case, particularly who they're knocking out. You have to equate that in. Look, I drove people crazy for all the years I was calling all the fights on ESPN. People would come in, the guy's 20-0, the guy's 15-0, the guy's 40-0, the guy's 50-0, whatever, 100-0. And I say, what does it mean? Look at the 100 guys that he beat. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. And it's the same thing here. It's not just about knockouts, it's about who you're knocking out. Because I've seen it. I've seen it where guys have all the knockouts in the world, and then all of a sudden they step up in level and then not devastating the way they were before with that kind of power. One of the reasons, because it becomes then a situation of delivery system, of technique, of expertise in those areas, that you can land the power, that you can deliver it, in an accurate way, in a obviously efficient, effective way. And then again, the quality of the chins you're hitting, where we usually don't talk about the quality of chins, but again, the ilk, the level of people that they're up against, it does matter, who's being hit, who's being beat. There's no doubt about it. I differ with Chris just a little bit. I very rarely differ with Chris or Paulie about anything, but I do think that Gervonta's resume is up to par. I look at the guys that, everyone's got the guys on their list that obviously are on the list to fatten the record and, to indulge the audience, to indulge the promoters, the networks, to elicit support from them, to get people excited, all of that, the promotional part of it. But I think he's knocked out some really good fighters. And I also feel that at the end of the day, it's the eye test. Yeah, it's everything that Chris touched on, everything I said, it's about who you're hitting. But it's also, you can see a guy. I don't want to say you can hear it, but the sound of punches sound different. And the eye test tells it. Punches are born They're not made. And the guys that are born with that kind of power, it stands out. It catches your eye. It passes that test. And for me, Gervonta, he's one of those guys. He's just explosive. And Chris is right. You could differentiate the kind of punch. Some of those kind of ponderous punches, like getting hit with a club. Other guys are the explosive ones where they just take the lights right out. Other guys are the ones who just dull your senses and they beat you into oblivion, so to speak. I mean, George Foreman type puncher was different than a Mike Tyson type puncher. Tyson had that snap, that explosion, bang, you're out. George Foreman hit it again. It was like getting hit with a club wrapped up in a towel where, you didn't know where you were. And then obviously you weren't there anymore. So there are different forms of power. I just look at it, Gervonta, as that born power. It just brings me to that saying, punches are born, they're not made. The guy who hits you, it explodes.
Paulie, what's your thought on Gervonta Davis?
Real quick. And
No,
Teddy, it was exactly why I was excited that you were here on this show today. The way that you were to explain that in the way that only you can do. So I appreciate you so much. But in terms of how I meant about Gervonta Davis and his competition, I agree with you that I just want to make sure I don't get killed in the comments here. I think it's just compared to who else we're talking about, it's tough because we're talking about him first. But in terms of competition of everyone else that we're talking about, I'm a big Gervonta Davis guy. I always have been. But sorry, Jam, go ahead. I just want to get in there.
Hey, listen, I appreciate you guys. I just want to say that. Go ahead.
Paulie, on your list?
I'm the guy that doesn't care about I'm the guy that doesn't care about the comments. I do agree with Teddy in the fact that he has that snap, impressive power when he lands. But I also agree with Chris on the fact that his competition is not where it should be. We brought up Mike Tyson, and we say, Mike Tyson, there weren't guys in his era that were up to par, so to speak, whatever. Mike Tyson fought them all, so we found out they weren't up to par, because he knocked every single one of them out, right? Or at least he beat them, right, in his era. And he was about to fight Holyfield. He went to jail, so he wasn't trying to avoid the undisputed cruiserweight champion who had just come up to heavyweight either. He went to chase those fights, and he was in his early 20s the whole time. Positive or negative as it may be, that's a guy that chased the fight. There are guys that chase those kind of fights. I think Gervonta Davis has power. You'd be moronic to think he doesn't. But where he lands on this list is more so, I agree with Chris, where the level of competition. I was working at Showtime when Jose Pedraza was struggling and saying in the fighter meetings he was staying at 130 pounds just because he had the IBF title. He actually probably lost the IBF title before he fought Gervonta Davis when he fought Edna Cherry, and Edna Cherry got robbed. So the title fight where Gervonta fought Pedraza has a little bit of stain on it because you beat a good fighter and you beat a fighter who actually went up and weighed and did good things because he could rehydrate himself at a higher weight class. But the 130-pound version of Jose Pedraza was already on his way out, and we know that in hindsight. I knew that at that time, but everybody else can know that in hindsight. I think the Frank Martin win was an impressive win, and it was a win that I was very impressed with because of the way he went and got it. He pressed Martin mentally, and then he knocked him out physically. And you can see the way he knocked him out. That's a bona fide lightweight. The way he knocked him out was for real,
A big lightweight.
But that's where you look at a knockout and you say, okay, he does belong on this list, or at least in the top 5, top 7 big punchers, right? But bro, you're putting out featherweights out cold, and at that point, featherweights out cold. Santa Cruz was the guy who turned pro at bantamweight. You're knocking out guys who turn pro at bantamweight. You're knocking them out cold. You're fighting ex 130-pound champions. You're fighting actually current 130-pound champions. You're doing it again now. So it's very difficult to really say where the power is. You can definitely see the power is there. But does he believe the power belongs where we're trying to put it, right? Because if he did, he'd be taking the Mike Tyson effect, where you're just fighting everybody in the weight class and seeing what happens, right? This guy's not too tall for you. This guy's not too big for you. You just take them all on. I don't see that. So for that reason, it leaves a question mark in my head. And I still don't see that, as we saw who he's signing to fight his next fight. So obviously, when you have in comparison other guys on this weight class that I believe, not in this weight class, other guys on this list that we may be talking about who I believe have constantly looked to fight the best and actually have not had the profile he's had, and maybe have been able to have guys avoid them See, people won't avoid Gervonta Davis because he brings a lot of money to the table. If he wants to fight somebody, he will. But there's other guys who are monster punchers and have existed even before, like Golovkin, for example. You have a hard time getting the big fights because nobody wants to touch them. They're such powerful punchers, but they don't have as big of a profile yet. Gervonta Davis has that profile, so he has the chance to live up to it. There are guys that do that. He's not one of them. He belongs on the list somewhere, but I'm not sure if he's in the top 5.
All right, well, we got a lot of names to get through. We spent a lot of time with Gervonta Davis. I'm going to go right back to you, Paul. You talk about the comment section. Canelo Alvarez. Now, you, of course, have been critical about his opponent's selection, not taking on the best at 168 pounds. Benavidez is the name that comes up most. Do you agree that he belongs on a list of power punchers? Yes or no, Paulie?
No, dude. He hasn't had a knockout in ages. What are we doing here? This is just what I'm saying. This is like the groupie thing. Everybody jumps in. We got a list of groupies. Let's just do the show with us. Stop letting the groupies in the thing. Just why are we even on this list? He hasn't had a knockout since last leap year, and he's a solid puncher. All right, he's talented. What do you want me to tell you? All right, he can punch a little bit, but does he belong in the top 5 biggest punchers in boxing? What are we kidding each other? Joke? I was curious if this guy would wind up on the list. I'm baffled right now. Actually, nothing should baffle me anymore with the amount of groupies that are in the media and fan bases at this point. But yeah, he's on the list. No, I don't think he belongs on the list. And yes, he's been a good puncher throughout his career to a degree, but not a top 5 biggest puncher in the sport guy.
Now, Chris, as Paulie points out, he hasn't had a knockout in a while, but you look at the Munguia fight, you look at the Berlanga fight, they did feel his power.
His chin more than his power.
Right, but this idea that the guys do feel his power and back up a bit. He still has power in his punches. Chris, what's your thought on it?
I'm pushing back on Paulie. I think the guy hits hard.
But nobody says he doesn't hit hard. Is he in the top 5?
That's the top
5 best biggest punchers in the sport list.
But wait.
No.
Let me give my reasons. Let me give my reasons. One, I've been in the ring with him. I sparred him 10, 12 years ago when he was 20 years old. But the guy can punch, and the fact that he's okay, the knockouts are not coming anymore because there's a different thing between big puncher and finisher. One necessarily means you're the other. There are guys who can punch really hard but aren't great finishers, and there's vice versa. There are guys who are great finishers who aren't the best punchers in the world. I think one-punch power, Canelo Alvarez has got it, man. I think he was back-to-back knockout of the years back in 2016, 2015, something. Back-to-back knockout of the year winner. That's
Kirkland and Khan,
something, man.
Yes,
Kirkland and Khan, back-to-back years. I think it was 15 and 16. I could be wrong on the dates, but regardless, that's something. And those are like highlight ridiculous knockouts against good fighters. Granted, Khan's super small compared to Canelo. But now even Canelo, you look at where he's at. He's fighting at 68. The dude's not a 68-pounder. He started at 150 pounds. He's 5'8.5". He's fought Kovalev at 175.
But that's the thing. He hasn't had knockouts. We're talking about the 5 biggest punchers in the sport right now.
Because he's 34 going on 58.
You're putting a guy who hasn't had knockouts on the top 5 biggest punchers in the sport. In other words, you condone that kind of stuff.
We got a list of a lot of good fighters.
All right. Gentlemen.
In other words, you condone that
Again,
kind
I'm
of
not
stuff.
putting Canelo at the top. Nowhere near the top. But especially this list.
Okay, but Teddy, let me throw it to you.
Isn't that King Cole over here, all right?
Bivol said that Canelo hit harder than Beterbiev. So Bivol says that Canelo hit harder. Teddy, what's your thought on it?
Oh, when a fighter says it, look, you at the end of the day, you're getting it from a guy right after a fight. I mean, Paulie and Chris are the right guys to answer on or expound on what I'm about to say. They really are, because they've been there, they've done it. Where you're in that ring, and everything is flowing the way it's flowing, and you just fought a historic fight. You unified the title for the first time in 25 years, undisputed fight, just a super hype fight, a tough fight, a really good fight. And you ask a question like that, I'd rather get the question asked to him a week later. I'm not saying it's not an accurate answer from him, from his heart and his mind.
Teddy.
I'm saying it's from the heart and the mind of a guy who just fought a historic fight. You know what I mean?
Teddy,
Am I wrong, Paulie? Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong, because 2 things can be right at the same time. One thing I was saying after the fight, and why I thought Bivol won the fight, is because 75% of Beterbiev's punches were taps. He was probing. So while Canelo didn't throw that many punches against Bivol, but when he threw them, he was whipping hard shots in there. So two things can be right at the same time. Beterbiev can be a harder puncher than Canelo, but at the same time, Bivol may have felt Canelo's power more than Beterbiev. But that's why I also thought Beterbiev lost the fight, because he's tapping most of the time. He wasn't even putting anything on the shots. People just assume he was putting things on the shots because of his knockout record. But if you look at the fight, Beterbiev's punching like this.
The way that's all fair. Look, the way I would identify and separate, list the power, if you will, of Canelo is that he's a good puncher. He drops guys. He's a select puncher. He's a specific puncher. He throws accurate punches. He lands clean, so he has effect. Clean, accurate punches. Chris made a great point. He's really he hasn't been a finisher recently, but he's a guy that when he dropped Munguia, beautiful, clean uppercut. When he dropped in his last fight,
Berlanga.
Berlanga. Beautiful timed left hook. Beautiful timed hook. Berlanga threw a right hand, left it out there, just a split second to right. He felt the hole with a short left hook. Why am I differentiating and just saying he's just a huge punch? What I'm saying is that, he's a good puncher, but he's a clean, accurate. He hits you timed, clean, accurate punches. That expounds on the power. That magnifies. When you hit a guy clean, how many times have we heard in the sport called the sweet science, where anyone who catches a guy clean, even if he wasn't known as a huge puncher, can hurt the guy? I'm not saying Canelo's not a good puncher. He is. He's a real good, but I'm a little with Paulie. He's a real good, solid puncher. And I know the bows and arrows are coming out already from the Canelo maniacs and everything else. But please, calm down. He's a really good puncher. But what I'm saying that differentiates it from a guy that just has that natural power that just puts the lights right out, that don't even have to finish a guy like Tyson used to be. Those kind of guys, Ernie Shavers was. Those kind of guys, Joe Louis was. What I'm saying is he fits into a category where he gets credit for knockdowns. He deserves it. But he gets knockdowns because he times guys perfectly, because his experience helps him, where he's calm enough in an uncommon environment where he can time you perfectly with one good shot, has the power to drive, but it's the timing. It's the ability to catch a guy cleaner than the average guy. He catches guys cleaner than most fighters. So I'm going to give him credit for that. I'm going to put a little check, a little something extra for all the fans out there that want to go after me. No, he might not be the greatest puncher in the list, but he's a guy that lands as clean as any of the punches, and that's why he has the effect and has the knockdowns. Is that? I hope that's okay.
I'm not giving any check marks at all. I'm not giving. This list is your top 5 biggest punchers in the sport.
This
is
great.
Based on the first 2 names that we've come up with, I'm going to change the name of the list myself because I'm understanding what it's become. This was supposed to be the 5 biggest punchers in the sport. This is actually your 5 favorite punchers in the sport. Thank you, because that's what it's actually. I can tell now.
All right, so Chris, let me ask you, Virgil Ortiz, what category does he belong in? Hard puncher or favorite puncher? You know when you have 22 wins, 21 knockouts, you got power in your hands. What's your thought on Ortiz and where he belongs?
So I'm not going to have Virgil that high in this list either, because I have to see him more at 54. At 47, he was mowing guys down. And he's not a single punch guy. He's not a one punch knockout artist. He breaks you down, he busts you up, his technique is fantastic, and he's vicious. He's mean. He goes after guys. He is what I consider a finisher, not necessarily a puncher. Yes, he can punch. Yes, he's strong. At 47, much more so than he is at 54. I got to see him more at 54. I actually think he's going to be more of a boxer at these higher weight classes from what I saw in that last fight with Bohocek. But he is a guy, it's perfect that he came up next, because he is what I consider a finisher. When he hurts you, he goes for it, and he throws a ton of combinations, a ton of punches, very, very busy guy. He's trying to get the finish, but I wouldn't have him that high either as a one-punch guy.
Paul, your thought, incredibly high percentage, but as Chris said, going up in weight class. What's your thought on Virgil Ortiz on this list?
Dude, Canelo went up a weight class, got no knockouts, and now we put him on the list. Of course Virgil Ortiz belongs on the list.
Canelo's in his 5th weight class.
Virgil Ortiz belongs on this list. He belongs on this list.
I didn't say anyone doesn't belong on this. He's just not that high.
But when you, and then one reason all of it, he wants all the smoke. He goes for all the toughest fights. He chases them. He was gonna fight Tim Tszyu. He ended up fighting Bohocic instead. He wants all the tough fights. That goes to show me that not only you're a puncher, but you believe in your power. That's why I like guys like this. You know your power can get you out of these fights. And yeah, he didn't win the fight by knockout against Bohocic. It could have actually went either way. Both guys were huge punchers. But you know what? You separate the men from the boys when you actually take on the tough competition. We can all fight Uber guys to bring the pizza after the show and get paid our knockout record, and then we can wind up on this list. But when you're willing to actually put it on the line against other monsters, and you can live up to that hype, and Virgil so far is continuing to live up to the hype, we'll see how far he goes. But as of this moment right now, Virgil Ortiz absolutely belongs on this list.
I forgot you renamed it your favorite punchers.
Emphatically,
he's going to get there.
He's my favorite. I love him, but come on.
Okay. Emphatically, Paulie Malignaggi putting him on the list. Teddy, is he on yours?
He's on my list as tremendous body puncher. That's his forte. That's his expertise. He finds the spot to the body, and he's dedicated to it. Like Paulie said, he's dedicated to get knockouts. He's dedicated to destroy your body. And for me, he's one of the top body punchers. I disagree. I disagree a little bit here with Paulie as far as his resume. I don't see. He stepped up in his last fight. I give all the credit with Bohocic, and he didn't get a knockout. And I just think when he was going through guys at welterweight, and then, of course, he's moved up, so you have to take that into allowance. You have to take that into consideration, which both of the champions did. He's moved up. But even at welterweight, he wasn't blowing through top names. He wasn't, beating guys or knocking guys silly that were guys that really would stand out on my list where it would get my attention and say, wow, that guy's gotten the distance with everyone. And that guy has shown me a great chin. And that guy has shown me the ability to last rounds. And he got rid of him. I didn't see that. Look, I know he's got power. I think the greatest thing about Ortiz is his ferociousness, his dedication to getting to you. I think that he could have one of the names from the guys back in the 50s that, like the guys that fought Patterson, Hurricane Jackson or something like that, where he's a hurricane, where he's looking to blow you out of there, where his intent is to get rid, to use the moniker of the Mike Tyson. He throws with bad intentions. He makes it clear what he's looking to do. Not win a decision, get a knockout. And that matters. That attitude does matter, that you're throwing those kind of punches, in a regular, consistent manner. You're not just throwing, like Paulie said, tip-tap punches, trying to set something up like Bivol does. That's Bivol's thing. That's Bivol's makeup. But Ortiz separates himself as he makes it clear, I am not going in the ring to get a decision. I'm looking to knock you out every round. I thought he stepped up with Bohocic in his last fight. I thought that showed that he's not on the top of the list for me. He's a good puncher, but in the way I described it, I didn't think his resume was the kind of resume that makes me put him on the top.
All right, well, let's talk about resumes. Paulie, when it comes to Terrence Crawford, no resume right now in boxing is better. Not necessarily known, I think, to your casual fan as a puncher, but a lot of knockouts against top-quality opposition. What do you think of him on the list?
What do you mean, what do you think of him on the list? Is this a puncher's list, or we're just naming popular guys on the list? This is who the next guy's on the list, is Terrence Crawford?
Terrence Crawford is next on the list. I'm looking at it right now. 41 wins, 31 knockouts.
Bro, did I get the memo correctly? The biggest punchers in boxing? Did I get the right memo? And again,
well, I think I know that's where we stand here.
Is Rod Sterling coming in
again,
here? Wait a minute,
Paulie, we're talking
Sterling.
about top five. Right. Go ahead.
Rod Sterling coming in from the Twilight Zone. Hold on. What? You're about to enter into another dimension.
So not on your list,
I feel like
Paulie.
that's where I am.
So not on your list.
No, he's not on my list. Of course he's not on my list. And yes, he ran through a bunch of welterweights. I think he had like 11, 12 straight knockouts. But come on, dude. Like, really? With the top five? Top five? No. Chris, you go. I can't do this anymore.
Chris,
I'm going to take my microphone off the show right now.
So I'm trying to get the criteria down while we're doing this. I'm maneuvering through all of this. So in terms of what we've been talking about, how this thing's going, so Crawford is basically the opposite of Gervonta Davis.
Right.
Crawford's reason for being here is based solely on his credentials, his opponents, the fact that he's been had a crazy knockout streak.
The list is not best resume. The list is biggest punchers.
I'm noticing that criteria is changing as we go.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to stay relevant. So if Crawford's here, then you got a guy who has been, so destructive. Every fight at 47 was a KO. That was, up until his last fight, the highest weight class he'd ever been. And he was beating good guys, knocking out good guys, and that means something. And in terms of being a pure puncher, he's not. He's a boxer puncher. He sets things up. Teddy, as you mentioned about Canelo, his precision, his timing, his ability to sense things in the ring make him a very, very dangerous guy. Where really he can hurt you at any time. And also the switching sides, being equally strong with both hands, being able to hurt you with the left, being able to hurt you with the right. Knocking out Kell Brook with a right jab over his jab, that was very impressive. So yeah, in terms of criteria that we're talking about, the guy's resume speaks for itself.
What's your thoughts, Teddy, on the power of Terrence Crawford? More boxer than puncher, but still does get the knockout. What's your thought?
Hey, he combines all the things that make you an effective fighter and an effective puncher too. Technique, delivery system, calmness, eyes, timing. He's got as good a timing as anybody. And he's got great eyes where he'll catch somebody, as we talked about, or I touched on Canelo, with a clean punch that somebody else is going to brush off the side instead of hitting him clean, impacting on the chin. He's going to hit him cleaner because of that timing, because of that vision, because of that package. It's not based purely on power. It's based on all of those things. And I don't think, where I'm a little different, we should take credit away from him because he has all those things working for him. And we shouldn't forget how many weight classes he's gone up. This guy started at what's it, lightweight? He went to junior welterweight. Then he went to welterweight. Now he's at junior middleweight. So I think this is a guy that does have power, showed it in the lighter weights, a little less now in the heavyweight, especially in his last fight with a 154-pound. He just got to that weight class. But it's a guy that we shouldn't take him off. We shouldn't discount him because he combines the power with all those other expertises, with all those other talents, all those other abilities of good eyes, good timing, fast hands, great technique. I think he belongs, not at the top, but I don't think we should in any way dismiss him in any way because of the things I said, because he's also known for having all those other qualities. I think he fits. He's got all those qualities and he's got pop. All right?
Well, I want to stick with you as the heavyweight coach. You coached Mike Tyson. Of course, your mentor, Cus D'Amato, his demon was Sonny Liston, of course. This idea, Daniel Dubois, our only heavyweight on this list, 22 professional wins, 21 by knockout. When you look at the heavyweights, Teddy, that you've been around, how do you rate his power?
Great. This guy, there's different body types, there's different muscularity. You got the wiry guys, the Tommy Hearns, the Aguayos, the Bob Fosters, those wiry guys that get leverage, they get torque. They are what? They just, it's like a slingshot, and they knock you out. And then you got the guys like him, heavy bone, thick bone. I've seen that mostly over the years with certain people from certain parts of the world, like the Samoans. David Tua. He's a David Tua type, where you got those thick bones, that thick mass. Tua could punch like hell. I know it was mostly only with the left hook for the most part, but the thickness, the bone density made those guys just naturally powerful. He's one of those guys that doesn't go into a gym to get his physique. He's one of those guys that it's attached to genetics. And when it's attached to genetics in that kind of way, as I talked about it, just being that kind of thick guy, that is the kind of power that is, it's a son of a gun. I mean, anything he hits your arm, he hits your elbow, it's going to hurt. It's going to be impactful. Just simply for the way I described it, that he's got thicker bones. You know, I'm not trying to be a internalist as a doctor here, but I've been around the sport where I've seen it. And you put your hands on him, you feel it. And then when he puts his hands on somebody else, they feel it. Yeah, this guy's destructive. He's dangerous.
All right, now I want to be careful. Paulie, don't rip your mic off and run away. You can agree that Daniel Dubois is a hard puncher, yeah? He belongs on this list, yes?
I agree. Everybody we've mentioned is a hard puncher, but this list is your top 5 hardest punchers.
Is Dubois in it?
None of the guys that I said are in the top 5 shouldn't be in the top 5 are not hard punchers. We're talking about your 5 best punchers.
Right.
Dubois is not in it for me, but I agree with Teddy in that he is a hard puncher. But when we stepped up Dubois against Joyce went like 10, 11 rounds, right? How many rounds was that fight? There was never a place where Joyce was in trouble. Like, you fight a guy who hits that hard, the guy has to barely touch you and you're in trouble, at least at some point, even if you got to beat him. You've got to completely shut him out the way Lennox shut out David Tua, where he didn't let him land basically anything. You know what I mean? A guy who punches like that, you've got to keep him completely controlled. It ain't like Dubois didn't have decent moments in the Joyce fight, but where did Joyce go? Joyce didn't go nowhere. You know what I mean? Then the Usyk fight, I don't know. I didn't see no big puncher. I see a guy who can punch.
I don't think he was the same
can punch,
guy
he's
yet,
definitely a hard puncher.
I don't think he was
okay,
the
well,
guy.
maybe he's not the same guy, but I've got to look at the resume. Remember, Joshua is also not mentally all there anymore.
No, I mean, listen, you can't get intoxicated by the Joshua knockout because Joshua, it's happened before. I'm not saying he's got a China chin, as they used to use that saying, or a glass chin. I'm not saying that. But he's a guy that has been knocked out before, so we can't get drunk with that one. But what I'm saying here is power is attached to intention. Intention is attached to confidence, belief. I'm just saying, you're not wrong, but I'm just saying my part is that Dubois, that was a different dude. That Dubois with Joyce and with Usyk had not mentally gotten and arrived to the place he is now. The place where he really, truly believes when he's throwing something, when he's doing something, he's going to beat you, he's going to get it done. He wasn't at that level of belief and confidence yet. He was not there. He submitted in those 2 fights. He broke down in those 2 fights. But he redeemed himself in the next 3 fights. Well, really 2 before he fought Joshua. And then, of course, that capped it off. But the only reason I thought that he won that fight against Joshua and he was going to win it wasn't because of just the power. It was because of the belief system. That he had gotten back to a place of being sure that he could do it. He wasn't sure. Being a confident guy.
So what I'm asking, Chris, is the jury still out on Dubois in that sense? Are we going to need a couple more fights?
But this is a top 5. Is this our 5th guy?
No, we're not. We're doing a bunch of
We're
names.
not done yet.
It's not like a normal show.
I thought this was the list.
No, it's not.
That was psych, bro.
No, it's not also not in order.
Oh, it's not in order. Okay.
You missed the beginning.
I must have missed that.
Right.
It's not in order. No,
I was flipping out.
That's why I prefaced in the beginning.
I was very disappointed.
I was happy we were doing it the way we were doing it because punching is so. Yeah. So right in the beginning, I said, I was like, I'm happy we're doing it this way because it's so hard to place guys on 1, 2, 3, 4 in punching. But I explained it in the beginning. His listening skills are.
So when it comes to Dubois, Chris, when it comes to Dubois, do you need more evidence?
Please.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I've seen Dubois can punch like a mule kick. That guy could be on 1 foot and knock you out. Forget it. I mean, he is a born puncher. The way Teddy said in terms of his bones, his muscularity, that's God-given. That's nature. That guy, he'll club you and hit you with your forearm and knock you out. He's something else. And I agree with you, Teddy. I think he's coming into his own. And the guy who fought Joyce is a different guy now. Also, that Joyce was a different guy than we saw now. That Joyce's chin is checked. He can't take a punch the way he used to. His name used to be Juggernaut because he actually held a record for getting hit by his opponent more than he landed in fights for his entire career. He had an iron chin for a long time. Fought Dubois, still had that chin. Then he fights Zhang, that chin is checked. He got knocked out 2 times in a row.
100%.
He lost his last fight again. So
he
I
got
think you got to look at
He
who
got
and
shot
when.
one. You can only take
real
that many
fast.
punches for so long.
Well, when you look at the heavyweight division, let's go back down the scale. Naoya Inoue, the monster. We know about his boxing ability and his power. Chris, let me start with you. I know you're a big fan. Where's he on your list of punchers?
Here we go. Now we're talking real punches. This guy
Thank you.
is
That's what I've been telling you.
He's a monster for a reason. This guy is close to number 1 on the list. He's way up there. Not only is he fundamentally sound, not only does he have the God-given gift of a one-punch power, not only is he a good body puncher, he's a good finisher. He's a puncher and a finisher. He's put together. He is a boxer-puncher who looks to knock you out every single round, every fight. This guy, I can't say enough. I'll let these guys talk about it.
Paulie?
Now we're at a whole different level.
Are we agreed, Paulie? Are you in?
Yeah, we agree.
Naoya
Of course
Inoue.
we agree. Of course we agree. Well, that's why I got scared, because at Dubois we were at 5, and I'm like, that's it? That's the list? Huh? We're not going to have Inoue on this list? What, we had him on minds? I was very disappointed for a few minutes, you know? But that's what that goes to Teddy. Chris, you should have let me get so upset like this.
I didn't understand, I didn't understand where you're coming from.
No.
Look out for him a little.
Thanks,
Just
Teddy.
a little
At
bit.
least somebody's got my back. Inoue is bad intentions, like Teddy says. One-punch knockout power, destructive, can fight, and wants all the smoke. I think it's very important to be on this list. You got to want all the smoke. You got to want all the best fighters and in your weight class that you're in or whatever
4
weight class
classes
you land
too,
in.
right? 4?
Yeah, and he's constantly chasing the best guys. He doesn't look at guys and say, all right, I went into this weight class, but this guy's too big for this weight class. Let's get the smoke. He just wants all the smoke. That's what makes him belong on this list, because he wants all the smoke and he continues to knock them all out, dude. That's a guy who belongs on this list. That's it.
Teddy, where do you put him? What's your thought on the monster Inoue?
He's a legitimate monster. He's got the right nickname. He earns that nickname. He earns the right to carry that nickname. Some people don't. He does. He's a monster in every way that Chris and Paulie said. Every way. Technically, mentally, emotionally, you know, he could go get you, he could box, he could counterpunch. He's a great body puncher. And don't forget, I don't think we forgot, but don't forget how many weight classes this guy's gone up. And don't forget how quickly he fought to this level and how he didn't take time fighting, you know, as Paulie would say, the Uber drivers. I mean, he was fighting good fighters out of the box. He was winning titles with like 4, 5, 6 fights, and then moving up in weight classes and winning more titles with 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever he's at now, fights. I mean, this guy, you got to be special to do it the way he's done it in all different weights so fast. And again, the repertoire, he can choose any way he wants to go about getting rid of you. And he does.
When you look at it, there's one guy who hasn't changed a lot of weight classes, but he's a great puncher, Artur Beterbiev. Chris, I got to start with you again. What's your thought on Beterbiev on this list? Where do you put him?
Now, he's another one. God-given power, physically strong, great endurance, technically sound, super technical in the way he lands his shots, sets things up, a great intuition. And just, I mean, I tell this story over and over again. I probably sound like a broken record for the for the Vosdik fight. Sitting in that fighter meeting and looking at this guy's hands, looking at the sinews and the muscles and the veins. He just looks like he's made out of something different. So I know guys like that. I fought Ruslan Provodnikov. His body was made out of iron. It was just a different thing. He's like a different cut out of a different cloth. And Beterbiev is that kind of guy. And he's got the delivery system. The guy has very good technique. He's very smart. We saw how tactical he can be in that fight against Bivol. So you put all that together, and it's really between Inoue and Beterbiev. I'm leaning Inoue because of the more weight classes, but it's really hard to look at Beterbiev and be like, that's not the best puncher in the world.
What do you think, Paulie, would be number 1 on your list?
No, Inoue was number 1 on my list. This guy was number 2, though. But yeah, same thing. I agree with Pritz wholeheartedly. Now we're getting to the names that actually make me feel like I don't have to wash myself in the shower after getting done with this list. I was feeling dirty for a second when we first started talking about some of these names. But now I feel clean again, you know? I feel like these are the pure punchers. These are the guys that belong on this list. Beterbiev is the guy who is basically, he's like the guy remember in the cartoons, when like the Looney Tunes cartoons, I know I'm aging myself, when you get hit on the head and you just see stars, or you see
Tweety
the
birds
canaries
flying around your eyes,
your head. Yeah. Because he doesn't have that snap. I think it was Ted that brought it up before, that snap that puts your lights out. He's like a clubber. He's like a George Foreman, where he hits you and you wish you were out of your misery, but you're not. So you're either gonna quit or you're just gonna get beaten into submission. And because he just clubs you and he leaves you seeing stars, but he doesn't put you out of your misery because he doesn't have that snap. I'll say it again. Dude, scary. Sometimes
Teddy,
you wish guys would just have that snap and put you out of your misery, I guess.
Teddy, is he the definition of, you said, born not made? This guy's a born puncher. Better be it. What's your thought?
No, he is. I mean, his bone structure, everything we touched on already. What Chris touched on. The guy, you touch the guy, he feels like steel. I mean, he's like an android. It's like there's something that's almost not, even you look at his head. I mean, there's something that's different about him. I mean, you look at the drills that he does. I would find you hard pressed to show me anyone else that does the drills on his knuckles, on his fingers, then on his wrist, and then push-ups with then on his forearms. I mean, everything is, again, it's like it's made out of molten steel. He is a guy that the old timers would say, I love the old timers sayings. They used to say, Teddy, this guy hit you on top of the head and he'll fracture your ankles. I mean, I mean, he hurts you. Okay, that's the best way I can say. Anywhere he hits you, there was mythical stories about Rocky Marciano, great puncher, a bludgeoning puncher. Another one, like me and Paulie, Chris talk about, not as snappy, but bludgeoning, where the thing about Marciano that was always talked about was that he could hit you on your forearms, hit you on your elbows, break your blood vessels, drop your arms, crack a rib. I mean, he was doing damage in a different kind of way, in that bludgeoning way. That's him. He just hurts when he hits you. It just hurts. And when you go home, there's bruises there. He's that kind of puncher.
That is the best kind of knockout puncher, no matter where it comes from, no matter where it lands. It's going to hurt every time. Appreciate you, champs, and Teddy for joining us. Remember, this weekend, of course, Tim Tszyu versus Murtaza Aliyev title fight. Our interview with him is up on our ProBox TV YouTube channel. Also, Wednesday Night Fights coming at you from Plant City tomorrow night. Download the ProBox TV app. Don't miss the fights. Don't miss the news. And we'll see you next time.
Wednesday Night Fights.
Dynamite action on Wednesday Night Fights every other Wednesday on your boxing channel.
Coming up on your next Wednesday Night Fights, October 16th. Chris, Primetime Colbert, and Omar Super Salcido step into the ring for what is sure to be a barn burner. Live from the ProBox Event Center in Plant City. Get your tickets at proboxtv.com or take your chances at the door. Wednesday Night Fights.
Boxing superstar Tim Tszyu is coming to Prime Video. Don't miss this championship showdown as Tszyu takes on undefeated Murtaza Aliyev for the Super Welterweight World Title. Saturday, October 19th, streaming live exclusively on Prime Video for all Prime members.
For more ProBox TV, scan the QR code on the screen or go to the App Store and Google Play. ProBox TV, your boxing channel.